Okay, so I have a bowl scraper, which we're gonna dislodge the dough with, and a bench scraper. I like using this wood one my stepson got me, and then there's this one too. And then over here we have a little bit of flour, a little tiny bit. Anyway, so here's our dough. It's looking beautiful. And my cat is meowing. But anyway, so see how I can, see how jiggly it is? Look at this. That is nice looking dough, okay? It's full of air, it looks beautiful. I'm gonna start just pulling it a little bit like this. I'm not trying to deflate the dough, I'm just trying to get it to dislodge itself a little bit from these sides. Okay, I'm just doing it all the way around. And then I'm literally just gonna dump it out onto this with no flour. All right, so here I go. Sometimes this particular container takes it a sec to really get going. Here it goes. I'm trying not to reach in there again because I don't want to release all, look at all these bubbles. I don't want to release all that air by, there it goes, by grabbing at it and messing with it a ton. All right, see, it released itself. So if you can notice, there's some webbing, which is good. That's the gluten strands. And if you notice, it's like wet down here. And the other side had like a matte finish and was sort of drier. And that's because it got some stamina touching like the side of that container that it was bulk fermenting in. And it was able to grow sort of a dome. It also just turns that way. And I don't know if you've noticed that with your starter or with this before, if you've ever made this before, but that is something that I try to explain to people when they're first making sourdough. That's something that you should actually look for, is that sort of drying out of the dough. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reach into this. I'm gonna take this bench scraper and I'm gonna push it down, and I'm gonna push the dough in one direction, either this direction or that direction. So I'm just trying to pull one away from the other, okay? So I'm just gonna do it, and I'm just gonna guess. We could get all technical and weigh it. I don't really want you to do that the first time you make this. Because you're gonna end up deflating your dough and not getting it right and cutting a bunch of different pieces, and we don't need to do that, okay? We're just gonna eyeball it this first time. So right here. Okay, that's okay. See, when I push on the bottom, how much easier it is? So I wanted to show you like these differences with how to use this tool. If you're just sort of pulling it in every direction, it's gonna make a mess. If you push on this countertop and use the countertop to help you, it's so much easier. So what I'm gonna do with this one, I'm gonna put this underneath. I'm gonna use my finger, no flour. I'm gonna use my finger to guide this onto this, but I'm gonna let the scraper do most of the handling. So I'm just reaching under, and I'm gonna extend this out and put it down on top of itself. Whoop. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing with this side. See, I'm extending it out and putting it down, okay? And then I'm gonna reach in here. I need to get this out of the way a little bit. All right, and I'm gonna do the same thing, okay? That one. And then this one. Hope you can still see. And then I'm just gonna flip it over, okay? Imperfect, but it's fine. Looks a little weird. You might be like, oh no, what's she doing? Trust me, there's a method to my madness. We're gonna gather this one up the same way, okay? So we're just gonna start by pulling it, putting it on top of itself. Your dough is probably gonna be less sticky than mine because yours is lower hydration. The first time you do this, I want you to do 72%. It's just easier to handle the dough. I'm just gonna flip that one right over. Boom, okay? All right, this one's bigger. So now you might be like, oh my gosh, this is a hot mess. She is ruining this. She's not, okay? What we're gonna do now is we're going to not touch it with our hands, okay? If you touch this with your hands, it's gonna stick to you, and once it sticks, it's gonna be really hard to get it not to stick. We're using this and this only, okay? So the motion I do is I put it in under it, and then I turn it a half circle and pull it toward myself with this. And then when I pull it out, I literally pull it out. I don't go like this. I don't pull the dough back up over itself, okay? So watch what I mean. Okay. Now look at that. It's already changing into a smooth ball, and it's not nearly as sticky. See these bubbles we're getting? Okay, so we're just gonna do this a few times until we can touch it, till it's not sticky. Oh, that's good. So now we can use our hands a little bit, okay, to help get it a little tighter. All right, that's all we need to do. This is called the pre-shape. All we need to do is get it to this point where I'm pushing this bubble down to the bottom so it'll pop. I don't want those huge ones in my crust, but I don't want to rip them on the top because we're trying to get this membrane, this top membrane, to be strong and non-stick. So the idea is every time we're doing this, see how when you're rolling it, it extends the skin and makes it stronger? Okay? That's what we want. We want this outer skin to get nice and strong, but without ripping it. All right? So this is good enough. See how bouncy it is? This is great. Awesome dough we got. All right, so I'm just gonna get it organized a little bit more, and then I'm gonna move it off to the side, and I'm gonna show you how to pick it up and put it down so it's not scary. So now that I have it really where I want it in terms of the sheen is matte finish, see the difference? Sticky, matte. Now what I'm gonna do to pick it up and move it out of the way, you don't necessarily need to do this depending on where you're shaping yours. You could just leave it right there. There are two ways to do this. You can either scoot it by continuing to use this motion and scoot it out of the way, okay? Or you can reach in with this and let this be the thing that's carrying the dough, and your hand is just supporting it, okay? So that's what I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna make sure this is a nice circle first. All right, so I'm just gonna reach in and place it over here. See how I did that? I got it just to the point where it's gonna rip if I keep messing with it, so I'm gonna leave it. Now, we need to get this one over to here, and because it's a sticky ball right now, or square-ish, we need to not touch it with our hand, okay? So I'm gonna reach in, whoop, and start getting it away from the sink area. kind of move it over into the shot here for you. See how it's like bouncing around too? It's like bouncing. All messed up. It's a bouncy, like it's so bouncy that we could like literally probably throw this and it would bounce. I don't want you to do that. That would be a waste of your dough. So this is just about perfect. We're just gonna leave it next to its friend here. All right, so I'm gonna cover them now with a flour sack towel. And we don't need to flour them right now. See, they're non-stick. All right, but we're gonna cover them and leave them alone for like 20, 30 minutes, okay? The way I do this is I like to put the towel over it. Don't mind, that's just some olive juice. I used these to make an olive loaf recently. I like to go down the middle like this in case I have some spreading. I often make dough that's way wetter than this, and so they just spread. And I do this with the flour sack towel so that they don't run into each other. It just makes it easier. These towels are amazing, but dough at this stage will never ever stick. Without flour, they're totally non-stick. It's pretty amazing actually. All right, so we'll come back to this in a few minutes when it's time to do the final shape. Okay, so what we're gonna do first is we're gonna take this bigger one. I can tell it's bigger just by looking at them. And we're gonna make this one into our everything loaf, into a circle. This is when I use the flour, okay? So we're just gonna put a pinch or so over the top here. Not much, all right? And we're just putting it on the outside just to keep this top part nice and dry and keep it from sticking. Because we're gonna end up flipping this over, okay? And exposing the bottom. And that's the part that we're gonna, that's the part we're actually going to work with, really. So this top part, we just want to be floured enough to not stick. So I do not want to add more flour to my board, all right? The reason is we do not, there's a little bit on here, a little bit of roughness, which is good. See how I don't really have any on my hands? We do not want to put new flour inside of the dough, all right? So if you're really scared, you can use a little bit down here. But it's really not necessary. So what I'm gonna do, this bubble will come to the surface. We're not worried about it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stick this under the dough. I'm gonna pick it up. Okay, so this again is going to be the one doing the work. My hand is just gonna be there as support. I'm gonna pick it up, flip it over, okay? Look, nothing happened. Okay, we're good, we're okay. Flipping it over. See how it's spreading out? That's good. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna get my fingers a little bit floured here, okay? And see how you can see that matte finish I've been talking about? There's a sticky and then there's this matte finish. We're gonna start pulling up the dough a little bit. We're gonna pick it up gently and just sort of using that matte finish as a helper. We're just gonna sort of shake the dough a little bit. And the reason for this is we wanna stretch it out a little bit. There's a big bubble right there. I'm leaving it. If it pops, it pops. Okay, so we're just trying to extend this. To have a bigger area to work with. And sometimes I go like this when I feel like it's uneven, when the dough is sort of uneven. So that's what I did. All right, so I do the same shape for whether I'm doing a batard or a boule. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull that a little bit. See how I'm just giving it a little tug, flipping it a third of the way. I ripped right there, but that's okay. A little bit more flour on my hands here. I'm gonna do the same thing with this side. Okay, flipped it over onto itself. Now, I'm gonna turn this whole log this way, all right? And now, what I do is I like to use this, I like to let the dough be the thing providing tension. So the weight of the dough provides the tension to the outside of this loaf, not my hands, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick this up, we're gonna roll it toward ourselves. So we're just gonna let the dough pull a little bit, okay? And we just let it, every time I roll it, I lift it up into the air a little bit, okay? And then when we get to the end, I like to give it a little tuck like this. I sort of rock it, right? Now it looks a hot mess, and that's exactly how it's supposed to look right now, okay? We don't need to worry about this. See these big bubbles? This is glorious dough. All right, so we're letting the dough have like a timeout. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna seal this side, and what I do is I push it into the log and then I squeeze it up and down. I'm just gonna get a little flour on my hands and push it in and just pinch it closed. A couple bubbles popped. All right, you don't wanna take a bunch of time over there because you don't want the, see how little flour I have? Just a little bit. You don't want to hang out with your hands pulling at that sticky dough because it'll stick and pull and rip the dough, and you don't want that, okay? So you're just doing it quick. See how I'm just in and out, in and out. Pinchy pinch. All right. And that's all you need to do. Whoop. Not quite. There. There we go. Okay, so it's a mess. It's supposed to be. Okay. Get this flour out of the way. You definitely don't want flour on the board for this part. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in, because we're making a circle, and I'm gonna do that same thing that we did last time, where I do this in semicircle toward me kind of thing, because the object here is to get these seams underneath and to let the sticky part of the dough stick to the counter. Okay, we want it to stick here. That's what's gonna pull it nice and tight on the top, okay? So just gonna go like this. You don't even really have to do those seams like I did because, you know, you're gonna be tucking them in a little bit. This is tight already. I don't wanna get it too tight. I don't wanna rip the membrane. It doesn't take a lot at this point to get it where we need it. We're gonna push this off to the side and let it rest for a minute. So here we go, same thing, all right? Ooh, that one had a lot. Okay. We're doing the exact same thing. We're gonna pick this up. Ooh, whoops, that's in the way there. Pick this up and flip it over, all right? Get our fingers nice and dusted. And start extending it a little bit. Now you don't want to pull, you're just sort of shaking it. I'm letting the dough, the weight of the dough do the work, okay? You're just barely pulling, barely. So I can see right now, I don't know if you can see this, this is like lower, and then there's a bigger part of the dough here, like there's a mound. So I'm gonna turn it so that when I do my roll, it's not all jacked. All right. See how it sticks a little, but not much? There's that matte finish that I keep talking about that really helps with that. Okay, so here's 1, 2, woo, big bubs. All right, and then we're gonna do that same rolling, okay? All right, just like before. Whoop. See how it's like not really sticking? All right, we're at the bottom, so do this rocking motion because it helps it stick. I'm gonna put a little tiny bit of flour on the outside of this before I seam it. I ripped it a little bit right here. And I'm not gonna stress about that because I'm not gonna push it to its max right now. I'm just gonna get this sealed enough so that it's closed on these ends, and then we're gonna leave it alone, and it's gonna sort of like human skin. It's gonna sort of scab over, and it'll be good to go when we come back to it. So okay, so we are pushing this in, this little coil over here, and we're just gonna seal it on up. I like to go from the bottom up. I find it just works better for me that way. Some people go from the top down, some people pull the side over. I just find this way works best for me. You're not trying to win a beauty pageant with it right now, okay? Because we're gonna come back to this in a few minutes. We're not gonna stress about it. We're just gonna get it tucked in. All right, well seamed. Perfect. So this is, I can tell, already sticking up the bottom, and that's great. What we're gonna do with this is we're gonna let it sit for a sec. And then when we come back to it, we're going to scoot it around on here just to tighten it. I'm getting a little bit of flour on the parts that had a stickiness to them. Just on the top. I don't want flour on the board, okay? I just wanted to fix that so that you can see how this is gonna work, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna come in, we're gonna move this flour out of the way. You can leave yours for a couple minutes right now. I'm not going to because I wanna get that done and I got a family waiting to get in here, so. I like to start by giving it a little rock toward me, because that's how I had rolled it. And I'm just sort of tucking the dough a little bit. And then I like to do the same things to these ends, okay, where it was like the seam. And see how it's sort of just pulling a little bit on the dough to get it in underneath, okay? It doesn't have to be completely underneath that seam, right? So then I'm just gonna tighten it, going in either direction here. All right, it's looking good. See how it's getting nice and tight when I go from side to side like that? Whoops, that's stuck a little bit. When that happens, you want to get away from it, okay? You don't want that to stick and pull out because it removes the tension each time you do that. So this is pretty good. All right, that is good. Looking good. Okay, that's good enough. Doesn't have to win a beauty pageant right now. It's going to when we're done baking it. But it doesn't have to right now. See how I just keep back and forth, pulling that tight? That's what your goal is to get this tight. Tightish, okay? So now comes the tricky part. I want to move this a little bit so you can see into the banneton. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick this underneath here, underneath the dough, and I'm going to scoop it up, okay? And I'm going to scoop it into my hand. I'm going to flip it into my hand, and then I'm going to take my other hand and I'm going to put it inside of the banneton. Okay, so there's nothing to fear here. So we're just gonna confidently do it. Ready? All right, perfect. We got it. Sticking a little bit, no big thing, okay? See? Now we're gonna get this extra towel sopping wet, okay? Not so wet that it's like dripping, but almost dripping. Okay, I'm gonna put it right over top here. I'm just gonna press it all around. I'm wanting all this surface of this to get wet. This is to get the seeds to stick. So the pleated areas I'm moving because then you'll have a stripe without any seeds. So I move them out of the way and press where it was pleated. Okay, nice and covered. All right, and then you can see how wet it is. So I'm gonna take these seeds right here and get this bench scraper. And I'm gonna pick this wet ball up and I'm gonna just dump it into here, okay? Plop. Now, I am going to get my fingers a little bit floury so it doesn't stick too bad and roll it on around. I don't want to put seeds on this part yet. There's a reason why we don't want to do that. See how it lost some of its tension? No big thing. We're actually going to fold it like we do with stretch and folds to lift it up and put it into its basket. So the way I do this is literally just like with stretch and folds, except for not wet hands, okay? So reach down, grab some dough, pull it up, okay? Just go around, try to do it as quickly as you can so that when you lift it, it's not too hard to lift. And you don't wanna like yank it, okay? Because you don't wanna rip the dough. That sort of defeats the purpose. All right, so see how it's like fighting us? Because we've been working this for a while and it is done. So If you weren't watching me, I would have already lifted it up in, but I'm just showing you how it's kind of unmanageable and it's still gonna work, okay? No big thing, see? No big issue. It's in there, okay? And just like every other thing that we have done, we are going to leave this alone for a few minutes. It's gonna spread out a little bit. We're gonna come back, we're gonna pull the tension back into this dough, and then we're gonna cover the bottom with the seeds and reach into the sides and get in there really good with them, okay? In the meantime, we're gonna finish this other one. So, like I showed you before, we can leave it like this, okay? Or we can be like, I want more tension in that loaf. And I can see there's more dough on that end than this end, right? So I'm gonna show you how to fix that. So we're gonna search here for that matte finish area of the dough. When we find it, we're gonna grab it. We're just gonna yank this a little bit. See how it pulls it a little further into the basket? And then pull it right up like that, okay? We're gonna go, I got a poppy in there. Well, whatever. We're gonna do the same thing to this end, except we're not gonna try to yank it further in. We're just gonna pull the dough out a little bit and pull it up onto itself, okay? This is just giving this dough more tension, because we sort of released the tension when we put it in here. And I want to show you how this alternative way to finish your final shape so that it's not as intimidating. Like, this is another way to do it, is to just sort of do it in the basket, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start on one end. And again, you're searching for that part of the dough that feels like a matte finish. And you pull it up a little bit and just fold it over onto itself. Now, if we had flour all over this, this wouldn't stick. And if we had tried to do this right when we put this in the basket, it wouldn't have stayed. It would act very elastic and it would be fighting us. But because we gave it a minute, it's letting us, okay? So this is like the trick. All the tricks to bread have to do with giving it a minute, okay? So there's that. Now we're gonna do this side. Okay, same thing, searching for that matte finish, and then pull it. You don't want to rip it, you just want to give it a little pull, okay? And you can feel it putting tension back into the loaf as you're doing it. Part of how we know is see it retracting a little. That's as much as it's gonna let us without fighting us. So we might as well stop, because I promise you're not gonna be the winner of the dough fight. The dough is. All right, plus now it looks like a cute, neat little package. And see that jiggling? Whew, that is beautiful dough, okay? That one's done. What I'm gonna do with this one is I'm gonna leave it out for like a little tiny while. It feels nice and cool to me. Actually, I'm gonna cover it with rice flour in a moment, and then I'm gonna put a shower cap over it and leave it out for 30 minutes, and then we'll put it in the fridge. Okay, now with this one, we're gonna do the same sort of thing, except we're going to notice, like, there, I got rid of, there was a large bubble there. We're gonna notice there's like a divot here. And the reason I'm sort of pointing that out is because if you aren't sort of cognizant of that being there, you could accidentally trap in a bunch of air and get a big weird hole there. World won't end again, but that's sort of how that happens. So again, I'm gonna do the same thing as before. I'm just reaching for these parts of the dough that are letting me touch them, okay? And pulling a little bit and folding over. Okay, so this is all covered now. I'm gonna put a little bit more seeds on here. This, and it has sufficient seeds all through. See how I pull it back a little bit? I did that and put seeds all in there. So it's nicely covered in seeds now. Just gonna give it a little tiny dusting. And I'm gonna do the same thing where I'm gonna pull it from the sides a little bit. This is what I want you to do. Pull it away from the sides a little bit and dust inside there, just all the way around, okay? And you'll be good. I'm just gonna cover this with a shower cap and cover this one up with its towel and pick up and put these in the fridge. Okay guys, it's time to check out what has happened. Oh my, would you look at that? Look at that beauty. Wow, she is a stunner. Dang. Okay, let's check out this. Woo, that's a beauty too. Look at that. Wow. Oh my goodness. Okay, see, even though we cut it all jacked, it still looks great. It's gonna get nice and browned now, and they're gonna be beautiful. This one is, you know, epic. This one is gorgeous. Look at that. I'm gonna cut into this one first. And we're gonna see what we have going on. Do you want to see? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful crumb.